I'm joined by David Rhode, co-founder and director of Ingle Rhode. Thank you very much for joining me, David.
It's a pleasure.
And where are you taking this call from?
So I'm at our office in London. I guess it's 10 past 10 here. So I guess we're in a slightly different time zone.
Yeah, actually, I'm also based in London, so I'm not too far away. I'm around Paddington.
All right, not
area.
a different time zone.
Yeah, exactly. Very similar time zone. If we were on opposite sides of London, then maybe it would be different time zone. You're based kind of near Bond Street, is it?
That's it. Yeah, we're about 1 minute from Bond Street Tube.
Oh, very nice. Very central and easy to get to. So one thing that I was really surprised about, which I read, is that a wedding ring that's made from normal gold can produce 20 tons of waste.
Sure. So there was a campaign a few years ago by Oxfam and Earthworks US, and they compiled the data for that. And it's based on this idea that big scale mining companies will typically grind up the ore that they produce and then use toxic chemicals, mainly cyanide based, to leach the gold from the rock. And then that will leave behind this this toxic mine waste, which you referenced.
And it's literally 20 tons for just one wedding ring?
That's the stat that they came out with. And again, it's quite shocking because you imagine what 20 tons of waste looks like. It's not nothing.
That must be like 10 elephants.
Something like that, yeah. So yeah, it's a lot of waste. It's a lot of waste to make one ring.
That's crazy because the number of people if you just take the tube from Paddington to Bond Street, I mean, the number of people you'll see on the tube wearing a wedding ring.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And they just casually, and the amount of waste that's been produced to get to that point is craziness.
It's a big thing, and I think most people are oblivious to it. Certainly, since Blood Diamond, the movie 15 years ago, most people are conscious that there's been a problem with diamonds.
Yeah.
Whether they care about it or not is another question, but they're conscious of it. But the thing with precious metals, I think that's news to a lot of people.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that you don't really consider. You sort of just buy your jewelry and get on with it, and sometimes it's one of the bigger purchases that you make in your life, so you don't really you're already maybe a little bit worried about paying however many thousands or more for your ring, and so you're not really thinking like, where exactly does this come from? How was it produced? At least it's not the first thing that would come to mind for me. Sure. But isn't that exactly how you got started?
Yeah, I mean, we started this business at a point when I got engaged, and I needed an engagement ring. And my wife, as she now is, she'd worked in Africa, not in a diamond producing area, but through her, I was conscious of the fact there was this issue with conflict diamonds or blood diamonds.
Yeah.
And I knew if I went to her with a ring that wasn't traceable back to source, it's not going to go down well.
Yeah.
So when you've seen the problem from the consumer's side, you kind of understand how pressing it is. And actually, just going back to your last point about the gold, I think what we're seeing now is there's this whole millennial generation coming through who are more ethically conscious than the generations that went before.
Yeah.
And when I said that most people weren't aware of the gold as an issue, I think that's changing. Perhaps that's a perspective from a few years ago. It is moving in the right direction for sure.
Yeah.
We did some market research not that long ago that concluded that for 9% of millennials, the ethics of an engagement ring were the single biggest factor in making a decision.
Wow, that's a sizable portion.
It is. And now, these people are very millennials are very price sensitive as well. So, they have to feel like they're getting great value. But 9% is a lot if they're putting that at the top of their list. And there's another 40 odd % on top of that for whom it is a factor. So, compare that, if you look, say, 20, 30 years ago, if you'd done that research at that point, it would have been totally different.
Yeah, I imagine people wouldn't have even considered it at all.
They wouldn't even have known what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And with the millennials now getting older and getting into that age where they are starting to get married, I'm sure that 9% is going to grow even more.
And the generation that comes behind them,
exactly.
Even more so. Yeah, 100%. You look at the kind of what they're teaching in schools now. you know, my oldest daughter's 10 years old, and I compare her kind of awareness of the world and ethical issues to mine at the same age, you know, it's totally different league. I didn't know what was going on, you know.
Yeah, it's great that they're teaching that kind of stuff, and that that the awareness is going up.
Yeah.
So what I really like about Ingle Rhode is that to avoid the 20 tons of waste, you actually don't even, in some cases, you find precious metals that aren't even, well, what I'm trying to say is you use recycled gold or platinum.
So with the gold, we offer a choice. We offer recycled, we also offer fair trade. And with the recycled metal, we get it from a refinery in the US that buys up old jewelry, melts it down, refines it to pure, and then sells it to us. You know, they have third-party certification in place that there's no freshly mined metal in that mix at all. Oh, wow. So we know that by using their metal, we're not contributing to demand for more mining, which obviously causes the problems we just discussed. The fair trade gold is from small-scale cooperative producers in South America who are certified by the Fair Trade Labeling Organization. And, you know, they work under very tight guidelines in terms of the environmental impact. So they do use mercury in the extraction of the metal, as opposed to the cyanide compounds that you see in the big scale mining. Yeah. But the way that they use it is very tightly regulated. You know, so one of the problems with artisanal mining throughout the developing world is that the use of mercury is kind of uncontrolled in a lot of cases. What do you mean by artisanal? So small scale independent mining. Okay. So you know a bunch of guys kind of working on just doing it on their own, sort of, without exactly not working for a big scale mining company. Got it. And so you know you'll see a lot of these guys splashing mercury around, which is obviously extremely toxic and causes a lot of problems. And so, you know, if the fair trade gold, when it's produced, you know, it's very strictly regulated how that's done to minimize environmental impact. Yeah, it's interesting because the phrase is mad as a hatter, but I mean, if they're splashing mercury around, right, then it could technically be mad as a miner, I suppose. It's not going to be pretty in the long run. It's not going to be good. Yeah. So fair trade, because fair trade, is that the same fair trade symbol and body that does fair trade for food, like you sometimes see on bananas? Correct. So the stuff you see, the coffee and the chocolate you see in the supermarket, same deal. So if you take a ring made in fair trade gold, it'll come with a little tiny fair trade stamp on the inside, and it's the same one, same little yin yang symbol that you see in the coffee, just without the kind of garish colors. You know, it's just a little stamp in the metal. What's cool I saw is that you're one of the first jewelers, I suppose, in the world to sell certified fair trade gold. So it's been on the market for a few years now. Yeah. Back since I think 2012. Oh wow. And so basically, there's a number now. There's a growing number of licensees, fair trade licensees, who are licensed to sell it to the public. Yeah. What you see is quite a few companies who will have a license, but they won't really sell very much of it. If that makes any sense, they'll make one or two fair trade pieces. Right. But then they'll have a kind of a very small fair trade range and then a standard line running alongside it. Got it. Whereas we don't, you know, essentially we were set up as an ethical company. You know, it's not like we have an ethical line and a standard line running side by side. You know, if you cut us with the same color all the way through. Yeah, that's really cool. And so going back to the recycled gold, it's also not just gold, it's also platinum, right? We offer recycled platinum as well, for sure. And is there any difference? Can I tell if I were to look at a ring made of newly mined gold or platinum versus recycled? Sure. Is there no difference at all? No difference in terms of the quality at all. We can make the same ring for you twice, once using recycled platinum, and once we could buy platinum from the market, totally untraceable, unethical. Make the same ring twice, you wouldn't know which was which. Huh. So you offer that as a choice? No, everything we do is recycled. We don't use a standard platinum from the market. It's not that we would make it for you twice. We could do that. Got it. So the precious metals that you use are always recycled? They're all recycled except for the fair trade stuff. Got it. So we offer a choice, recycled and fair trade. I see. Okay, cool. And then as part of that, I mean, most wedding rings and things have diamonds on them. Sure. So I don't think there's a way to recycle diamonds. No. So if you were looking for a ring that required multiple small diamonds, we source those through a manufacturer who buys rough crystal from the Diavik mine in Canada, cuts and polishes, doesn't mix with other sources. Mm-hmm. If you're looking for a big diamond, then that would come under a label called Canada Mark, which essentially is the consumer-facing brand of a Canadian company, Dominion Diamonds, who mine the Ekati mines and also Diavik mines in the Northwestern Territories. And those stones are, laser inscribed with a unique tracking number that essentially allows so that number will be found on the stone itself, also on the paperwork we supply with the diamond, also held on a database bed by the Canadians.
Wow.
And so our client can trace the stone independently of us, verify it directly with the Canadians, and find out, for example, what was the weight of the piece of rough crystal that the stone was cut and polished from. So it's essentially a birth certificate back to source.
Wow.
And so what it means is that, once you know where the material's from, you can then, if you're interested, you can do due diligence in terms of how it was produced. Were there children working in the mine? Did it come from a conflict zone? Was it sold to fund military activity? All these kind of obvious questions, which, if you don't have any visibility, then you can't really answer them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes sense. So that's the importance of being able to trace back to source.
So exactly. And so, historically, the problem in our industry has been that lack of visibility in the supply chain.
Right.
So historically, a wholesaler might buy diamonds from 10 different places. Some of them might be quite ethical, some of them totally unethical.
Yeah.
And then mix those stones together. They're not kept segmented in accordance with source of origin. They're mixed together. They may be cut and polished beyond recognition, sold on down the chain. By the time you as a consumer ask the retailer, where's my diamond from? Or where's my sapphire from? Or where's the gold from?
Yeah.
You just don't have that visibility, and you can't get back to it. So essentially, we just have to work slightly outside of the conventional supply chains in order to make that work.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I was actually surprised to even know that Canada has diamonds, and I saw that Canada provides 15% of the world's diamonds.
Right.
That's amazing, because most of the time, I mean, like you were saying, blood diamonds, that doesn't sound like something that would happen in Canada.
As you say, I mean, most people, as you say, just assume diamonds come from South Africa.
Right.
Because, historically that was the case. So they had the big diamond strikes in the late 19th century. For years, they were the dominant producer in the world. They're not even in the top 2 or 3 now. They've fallen back. So Namibia produces a lot. Botswana produces a lot. Canada's big.
Yeah.
Stones coming out of Russia, Australia. Those are the big producers.
So first of all of your diamonds and precious gems, you can always trace them back to the mine of origin.
The same principles apply with different stones, even if it's not exactly the same process. So what there isn't, with colored stones, rubies, sapphires, emerald, there isn't a laser inscription track and trace service the way there is with some of those Canadian diamonds.
Right.
But the same principles will apply. So what we won't do is buy from a wholesaler who's buying from multiple places and mixing the stones up. We'll only deal with somebody who's bought from one particular source and where we can verify that source, if that makes any sense. So we can still tell the client, this is where your stone came from, and this is why we believe it's an ethical production. And then they can then decide if that matches their criteria or not. But if you just buy from some anonymous wholesaler who's got stones from loads of different places, then you can't really make those claims.
Does that mean that you're trying to buy directly from the mining companies as much as possible?
Typically, what you'll have is you will have small-scale artisanal miners in different parts of the world.
Yeah.
And then our connection will be buying directly from those guys, if that makes any sense.
Got it. So basically, the closer you get directly to the people, obviously the more you know where it's coming from.
Exactly. It's when you have either multiple steps in the chain, or you have anonymous steps in the chain where stones are getting mixed up. That's where you have a real problem, because then it's very difficult afterwards to unpick it, as we discussed.
Yeah, it makes sense. And so one thing I really liked about the Canadian company that you were referencing, I took a look on their website, and they take care of the environment when the mining is finished. Because I guess when they're mining, it seems like you have to essentially dig this massive hole in the ground, and like you have to move all that earth somewhere. So what happens when they're done with the mine?
As you say, I mean, this is something that's really important, because the truth is, it's not like a few hundred years ago where you could pick diamonds out of riverbeds in India, for example. A lot of the big historic diamonds from a long time ago were like that, basically almost zero environmental impact.
Amazing.
These days it means, generally speaking, drilling down into a pipe and extracting stones from under the ground. And that has an environmental impact any way you look at it.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's not like mining for gold, for example, where you need to use toxic chemicals to extract the metal. But there is a physical impact on the landscape that has to be mitigated. So it is important that these companies are operating in countries with you know, robust environmental legislation that is going to look at how these things are fixed. You know, actually, on that point, it's worth looking at the limitations to what anyone can do in this area, because I guess we don't pretend to our clients that our product is 100% ethical. It's very close to being 100% ethical. It's as ethical as it's possible to be, and it's much more ethical than most jewelry on the market.
Yeah.
But it just isn't possible to be perfect. So, for argument's sake, you know, once a diamond has been extracted, you know, it's going to cross the world by FedEx. You know, we're racking up air miles. You know, there's a footprint attached to that. You can't get around. All right, it's not a big bulk item. You know, it's a small item, but it's still going to have an environmental impact shipping it around the world.
Yep.
Or, for argument's sake, refining recycled metals, you know, involves melting these metals at high temperatures. You can't get, you know, and removing impurities. It can't be avoided. It's a lot cleaner than, you know, the 20 tons of mine waste that you referenced earlier from fresh mining.
Yeah.
But it's still not perfect. Or as an alternative to Canadian mine diamonds, we also offer lab-grown diamonds, cultured stones. And but even those, you know, there's an environmental impact to making those. You know, in most cases, you know, there are companies now who are claiming that they've minimized that environmental impact of creating these stones under a process high temperature, high pressure. They claim they've made it very clean now, but again, it's still not going to be perfect, and we're still going to have to ship these things around the world.
Right.
So the truth is that, but I think you can apply that logic to almost any, you know, quotes unquote ethical product. You know, what we're not saying in any of these cases, you know, the fair trade coffee is still going to have to be transported from wherever it's produced to the supermarket. It's still going to have an impact to it. What we're not saying is there's absolutely zero impact. What we're saying is it's been minimized literally as far as it can be minimized. And if you want that product, you have to live with the fact that you have an impact, and we're doing it as well as it can be done.
Yeah. And I suppose you can always, since you're minimizing it so much, you can always, I mean, you can always offset that remaining amount with planting trees or some other kind of environmental work.
Exactly. And, you know, and our commitment to our clients is that we're going to explain to them what these issues are.
Yeah.
You know, we're not going to evade them or avoid them. You know, we're going to be absolutely open, and then they can take a view on, do I want a ring? If these are the implications, and truthfully, they just want to feel like they've done it the cleanest way they can.
Yeah.
And also, you know, if they want to do other stuff in their life beside that, that's obviously something they can do.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. So going back to what's done with the environment once the mining is finished, what do you have a view on what exactly they do with the?
So far, none of the big scale Canadian mines have been worked out and closed down yet.
Okay.
But there is legislation in place that's going to dictate how they're tidied up and returned to a proper state after they're done.
Right.
So, you know, we're talking about future work, but that is written into law. So I think we can be fairly confident that it will be enacted.
Yeah, that's great. And are these kind of things with the other countries? You know, you were saying like Namibia, for example, and Russia. Is there any sort of ways that they're being ethical and environmentally friendly in those countries?
Difficult to say. You know, not to a point where we're confident about stocking their stones, if that makes any sense.
I see.
So, you know, clients will sometimes ask us, you know, wouldn't it be great to do something for diamond miners in Africa? You know, and absolutely one day there will be a fair trade African diamond on the market, and when there is, for sure we will stock it.
Yeah.
But that's some way off in the future. You know, it's it's not going to be within the next few years.
So I guess what you're doing is shifting the demand over to basically certified fair trade mining and mines where it's very obvious and very clear to anyone who searches that it's ethical and environmentally friendly. And
Correct.
the idea by shifting the demand is really encouraging others to follow suit.
I guess in a sense, I mean, rather than shifting it, we're meeting a demand that exists. You
Okay,
know,
yeah,
I guess, in the end, consumer power drives all the change in our industry.
exactly, yeah.
And, we believe that we're ahead of the curve in terms of looking to address that. But yeah, it feels to me like there's a general process of education that exists outside of our industry, as we talked about with these millennials who are very conscious, very aware.
Yeah.
And where they go, then the market will follow.
Absolutely. Going to you mentioned lab grown diamonds. That's
Sure.
really interesting. And you called them cultured, which sounds really
Yeah.
cool. Um, I mean, diamonds, as far as I understand, it's basically carbon that's just under a lot of pressure for a really long time, right? So how does,
Exactly. So basically, diamonds that are mined, they were produced under the Earth's crust millions of years ago.
Mhm.
There were little bubbles of liquid carbon at
Mm.
very, very high temperatures, very, very high pressures. Over time, those little bubbles gradually rose to the surface,
Mhm.
and they cooled down, and they became the rough crystals that we dig out of the ground now.
Hmm.
And during that process, you might get impurities trapped in the crystals, so little black carbon specks, or little bubbles, or little kind of tiny cracks, or whatever. And these are what we call inclusions. So when we look in a diamond now, we see the imperfections in the stone.
Mhm.
Those are said to affect the diamond's clarity. Those are natural inclusions. Those are things that were created during the natural process of the diamond being formed over millions of years. So the process by which lab-grown diamonds are created now, or cultured. I'm parroting the terminology those guys use when they're talking about their product. The process, high temperature, high pressure. Essentially, they look to recreate that process that took millions of years under the Earth's crust in a laboratory over the period, much shorter period of time. Again, I'm not a scientist,
Yeah.
but essentially that's what they're doing. They're recreating that process. And they will seed a tiny amount of diamond into that, and then they'll build around that diamond with that
Oh, wow.
process. There's another alternative way of doing it. I think it's called gas diffusion, which again, I'm not an expert on at all. But I think there's been different companies have pioneered different techniques, and it's moving forward really fast. Moving forward really fast.
It's incredible. I'm sure like you were saying earlier, the environmental impact of that. I mean, there is some, but it's not going to be the same as going into a forest somewhere in the middle of Canada and just digging a massive hole in the earth.
It's funny because you listen to the people who've got a vested interest in these two different routes talking, and you'll come away with a slightly different impression. I spoke to one salesperson at one of these lab-grown diamond companies a while back, and she said it's like running your hairdryer for a few days.
Wow.
To make a significant sized diamond. Huh. So it doesn't sound so bad like that.
Yeah.
Flip side is I have definitely verifying that. This is her data. I don't think there's any data in the public domain that confirms it's like running your hairdryer for a few days rather than like running your car for a couple of days. Which is obviously a different thing.
Yeah.
I'm inclined to believe her. Because I think at some point they will probably start publishing this data because there will be increasing amounts of demand for it. But yeah, there is some impact, generally speaking. Although some of these companies now claim to have made it very, very clean.
Yeah, makes sense. I think, especially as they keep improving the process and doing research, they'll find more efficient ways of making it.
As you say, there's a company in the US now, Diamond Foundry, who claim to have really cleaned the process up in a big way. Again, this is we're working with their data rather than kind of externally verified data, but it's still. It's interesting. It's moving forward.
And can you tell the difference between? I mean, if again the whole thing about putting it in front of me, would I be able to actually see the difference?
Not to the naked eye. Now, if you took the two stones to the laboratory will be able to tell you which was which for sure. But no, if you were to walk into a shop and saw two rings side by side, you wouldn't be able to tell.
Would you be able to tell looking at it closer with your?
Not with the jeweler's glass. No.
Wow.
In the laboratory, they can tell no problem at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that level of analysis that's needed.
So it's pretty much. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's the same. I mean.
Oh yeah, I mean they are diamonds that we're talking about.
Yeah.
The fact they were produced in the laboratory doesn't mean they're not diamonds. They're not substitute. They're not like cubic zirconia or moissanite or other kind of materials that historically have been used as cheap substitutes for diamond. They are diamond.
I wonder
You
what
know,
that's.
sorry, I cut across you. Sorry.
No, no, go ahead.
I was going to say, you know, chemically, physically, they have the same properties as
Yeah,
diamond.
yeah, amazing. I suppose. Yeah, there's probably certain things that are different in terms because of the length of time that they were made. Maybe that's.
Yeah, it's on a microscopic level that there are
Yeah, yeah,
differences, but they are physically they are diamond.
yeah. It's amazing.
So yeah, it's you know, in terms of how they're marketed, you know, it's very important that they're marketed differently so that people understand. You know, it's about disclosure. It's about people understanding what it is they're buying.
Yeah,
And that's partly because, you know, there's a price difference. You know, they tend to trade at a discount relative to mine diamonds. And so, you know, it's important that people understand what price they're paying for what product.
hmm yeah. I was going to say that I wonder what lab-grown diamonds will do to the diamond market, but it seems like they're not really. They are different products, so it's not like you can just flood the market with, you know, a billion tons of lab-grown diamonds and then all of a sudden the price drops because people will say,
Sure.
well, those are lab-grown versus mined.
Well, that's the thing, I guess. At the moment, clearly, you know, people are prepared to pay more for mine diamonds.
Yeah,
You know, that's the state of the market now. So I guess what would be totally, I guess, unethical and illegal would be to sell a bunch of lab-grown diamonds as mine diamonds,
hmm
but that essentially would be fraud.
yeah,
But what we haven't seen at the moment is the availability of lab-grown diamonds just destroying demand for mine diamonds.
yeah.
Who knows? I mean, who knows what will happen in 10 years? You know, there is more demand. I'd say in the last year or two, there's been more demand for lab grown than previously,
hmm
but it's still relatively small compared to the demand for mine diamonds.
Yeah, and maybe as people start to see more and more, you know, or start considering the effects potentially of mining diamonds, that
Yeah.
like with the millennials and thinking about certified gold and recycled gold and so on, it could shift.
As you say, I mean, here's the thing: we're very happy offering both.
Yeah,
You know, the traceable Canadian diamonds and the lab grown diamonds. We offer them side by side. And you know, we will then provide consumers with the information they need on both of these, and they'll make their decisions.
yeah, makes sense. And as we're starting to wrap up, I'm just conscious of time here. I always like to ask, kind of as an inspiration, because you're doing so much great work to be ethical and environmentally friendly. What do you do on a personal level to be like just on a day-to-day
Sure.
basis to be environmentally friendly?
Just within our company, or just
Yeah,
ourselves, or you
yeah,
know.
within your company, at work, at home,
Sure,
just things
sure.
that yeah,
I mean, I guess here's the thing. I guess, you know, speaking personally, you know, I try to be good about doing my recycling,
yeah,
you know, and to not use leave plastic waste around, and you know, all the obvious stuff that we should be doing. You know, I'm not
yeah,
perfect at all. I certainly wouldn't want to hold myself up as some kind of model for what we should be doing. I'm sure, you know, you could drill down and find lots of things I should be doing better.
I think that's the case
But
for all of us.
yeah, but we try to, you know, as a company, we try to look at different aspects of our business.
Hmm
So, you know, we're a living wage employer, for example,
Mm.
which actually a client of mine, you know, a few years back actually works for Living Wage Foundation, and he came in and, you know, first thing he asked is, "You guys are a living wage employer?" And I thought, actually, yeah, that's something we need to do, you
Yeah,
know, and he gave me a hard time about it. I was thinking, though, you know, we haven't got anyone here on minimum wage anyway.
yeah,
They said, well, what about the people from the landlord who come in and clean your offices? You know, good point. I hadn't thought about that, you know,
yeah,
because we don't employ them, but then we need to go to the landlord and find out you know,
mm.
what are they getting paid? And
Yeah,
actually, that's something we need to address. So, you know, how should I put it? You know, you fix one thing, then you find out about another.
yeah,
And,
exactly.
you know, it's a constant process. So, you know, I certainly wouldn't want to stand here and shout about how great we are. We do what we're aware of, but I'm sure there's more things that we need to look at that we're not yet aware of.
Yeah, well, I think taking one step at a time, and you know, we've been discussing the amazing work you've been doing as Ingle Rhode with your precious metals and the stones as well. So, you know, the things that you do around that as well, just kind of like continue to build it up. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's a constant process of refinement. And as you were saying, it's not about being perfect. It's about doing your best to minimize and get as close as possible, I would say.
So yeah, hopefully we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, exactly. And so where can, if people wanted to learn more about Ingle Rhode, see the work you're doing, even purchase a ring or some stones, where can they go to find out more?
They go to our website, www.englandroad.com, or just Google us. You'll get there quickly.
Excellent.
Feel free to give us a call anytime. Love to talk about
Perfect.
this stuff.
Well, David, thank you so much for your time. It was really great talking to you. Really interesting to hear about this process and all the work you're doing.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, give us a 5-star rating. And also, please subscribe, whether on your podcast app or on YouTube. And that way you can be the first to know about new episodes. Thank you very much, and talk to you soon.